The gym closed at 10, but my wife came home at 1 in the morning. That single fact changed everything I thought I knew about the woman I married 9 years ago when we were both naive 22-year-olds. We met during her senior year of college while I was already knee-deep in building what would become a successful landscaping business with my best friend from high school. College never appealed to me the way it did to her. While she accumulated student loan debt that we are still paying off today, I was learning the value of hard work and entrepreneurship in a way no classroom could teach. She graduated with a business degree and landed a position at a popular clothing retail store where she has worked full-time for the past 7 years. The student loans hover over us like a dark cloud, but I never complained about helping her pay them down because that is what married couples do for each other. At least, that is what I believed until everything fell apart. We made the decision early in our marriage to wait on having children until our finances improved. The debt from her education combined with the startup costs of the landscaping business meant we needed to be smart about our future. I supported her through the stress of finding work after graduation, celebrated with her when she got promoted to assistant manager, and never once made her feel bad about the monthly loan payments that consumed a significant portion of our budget. My wife has always been what people call a social butterfly. She makes friends easily wherever she goes, strikes up conversations with strangers in grocery store lines, and seems to know half the people in our small North Carolina town. I used to find this quality endearing because it balanced out my more reserved personality. She would drag me to social events that I would never attend on my own, introduce me to people who became genuine friends, and helped me network in ways that actually benefited our landscaping business. Looking back now, I realize that her social nature also provided the perfect cover for what she was really doing. About 6 months ago, she started talking about wanting to get healthier and lose some weight. She had gained about 15 pounds over the past 2 years, something that happens to most people as they settle into their late 20s, but it bothered her more than it bothered me. I told her I would support whatever she wanted to do, and when she suggested joining the fitness center near her workplace, I encouraged her wholeheartedly. She signed up for a membership and started going 3 times a week after work. Initially, I was proud of her commitment and noticed that she seemed happier and more energetic. She would come home around 8:30, shower, and tell me about her workout while we ate dinner together. The routine lasted for about 3 weeks before things started to change in ways so subtle that I almost missed them. The first red flag should have been when she started coming home progressively later each week. What began as arriving home at 8:30 slowly shifted to 9, then 9:30, then sometimes after 10. When I asked her about the change, she explained that she had made some new female friends at the gym who liked to chat after their workouts. She painted a picture of women supporting each other in their fitness journeys, sharing healthy recipes, and bonding over their struggles with weight loss. It sounded reasonable, even admirable, so I accepted her explanation without question. She claimed these women had become an important support system for her, and I wanted to be supportive of anything that made her feel better about herself. For the next 3 months, those late return nights from the gym became the new normal in our household. What started as occasional delays gradually transformed into a consistent pattern that I should have questioned much sooner than I did. She would text me around 6:30 to let me know she was heading to the gym after work, and then I would not hear from her again until she walked through our front door sometime between 10 and 11 at night. Each time I asked about the extended absences, she repeated the same story about her new female friends and how they enjoyed talking after their workouts. She described these women as if they were long-lost sisters who understood her struggles with body image and motivation in ways that I apparently could not. The stories became more elaborate over time, with details about their conversations, their personal lives, and their own fitness journeys that sounded rehearsed rather than spontaneous. I wanted to believe her because, Questioning your spouse about something as innocent as making friends at the gym seemed petty and controlling. My business partner had once warned me that marriage requires a delicate balance between trust and vigilance. Still, I leaned heavily toward trust because that is what healthy relationships are supposed to be built on. The night that changed everything happened on a night in September. She had left for the gym at her usual time, but by 11:15, she still had not returned home or sent any communication about her whereabouts. Something deep in my gut told me that this time was different, that the excuses and explanations were about to crumble. Instead of calling or texting her, I decided to drive to the fitness center to see for myself what was keeping her so occupied on these late nights. The parking lot was empty when I arrived, and the building sat dark except for the emergency exit lights that glowed dimly through the glass doors. A small sign posted near the entrance clearly stated that the facility closed at 10 p.m. on weekdays, which meant she could not possibly be inside talking with anyone. Her car was nowhere to be found in the parking lot, the adjacent shopping center, or any of the nearby side streets where overflow parking sometimes occurred during busy periods. I sat in my truck for about 20 minutes, hoping that maybe I had misunderstood her schedule or that she would appear with a logical explanation for the discrepancy. When she finally walked through our front door at 12:53 a.m., I was waiting in the living room with questions that I could no longer suppress. She immediately went on the defensive, telling me that she didn't need a second father keeping tabs on her and that she didn't need to account for every minute of her time like some teenager with a curfew. According to her story, the group of women had decided to grab coffee after their workout and lost track of time while sharing personal stories and bonding over their mutual struggles. Two details about that night stood out to me in ways that made her explanation seem implausible. First, the gym had been closed for nearly 3 hours by the time she returned home, which made it impossible for them to have worked out and then spontaneously decide to extend their evening. Second, she was wearing a fitted black dress that accentuated her figure in ways that seemed inappropriate for a casual coffee meeting with female acquaintances from the gym. When I pointed out the timing discrepancy between the gym's closing hours and her arrival home, she claimed that the conversation had been so meaningful that they moved their gathering to someone's apartment. I chose not to respond to her explanation that night because arguing at 1 in the morning rarely leads to productive conversations or honest revelations. Instead, I told her that the lack of communication about staying out so late was disrespectful to our marriage. Over the course of the next 3 weeks, she continued to come home late after her alleged gym sessions, and I continued to bite my tongue while gathering my thoughts. My plan was to find concrete evidence of whatever she was really doing during those missing hours, because confronting her with only suspicions and timeline inconsistencies would likely result in more elaborate lies. The financial constraints of running a small business meant that hiring a private investigator was not feasible, but I knew that resourcefulness could accomplish what money could not. We owned an older model van for our landscaping business, which we had purchased used and never bothered to paint with our company logo or contact information. The vehicle was perfect for surveillance because she had never seen it before and would not recognize it as belonging to me or my business partner. My plan was simple: follow her from work to see where she went during those supposed gym sessions and get photographic evidence of whatever I discovered. The opportunity came one afternoon when I had finished my landscaping appointments early and could position myself near her workplace without arousing suspicion. I parked the van about a block away from the clothing store where she worked and waited for her shift to end at 6:30. I ended up waiting about an hour. She walked out of the store at 6:38 and walked to her car with the same casual demeanor she displayed every other day of the week. She arrived at the gym parking lot at 7:16 and walked inside carrying her usual workout bag and water bottle. I parked far away from the entrance, choosing a spot near the back of the lot where the van would blend in with the other vehicles, but still provide a clear view of the exits. For the next 2 hours, I believe, I sat in that van watching people come and go while my wife remained inside the building. At 9:37, she finally walked out from the gym, accompanied by 3 women who appeared to be in their late 20s or early 30s. The women chatted briefly in the parking lot before walking to their cars in different directions. I expected my wife to head home at that point, but instead, she sat in her car for several minutes while looking at her phone. When she finally started driving, she took a route that led away from our neighborhood rather than toward it. My heart rate increased as we passed a turn that would have taken her home, and I realized that this night was going to reveal whatever truth she had been hiding from me. We drove for approximately 20 minutes through parts of town that neither of us was familiar with. She eventually pulled into the parking lot of a small family-owned restaurant that I had never seen before, despite living in this town for most of my adult life. I parked across the street behind a cluster of other vehicles and watched as she got out of her car and walked toward the entrance. A man was waiting for her near the front door, and when she approached him, they embraced in a way that made realize my wife was having an affair. After their initial hug, he reached around and squeezed her backside and didn't let go, and she didn't push his hands away. I fumbled for my phone and managed to take several photos of their interaction. While my heart was racing, I had to make sure I kept the phone steady to make sure the pictures came out clear. They remained outside the restaurant for only a few more minutes before going inside together, and I used that time to collect myself and decide on my next course of action. My first instinct was to march into that restaurant and confront both of them immediately, but the rational part of my brain reminded me that I was carrying a concealed weapon and might do something irreversible in the heat of the moment. She was not worth destroying my life over, regardless of how betrayed and angry I felt in that moment. They stayed inside the restaurant for about 45 minutes while I waited in the van, alternating between rage and disbelief at what I had witnessed. When they finally came back outside, they walked directly to his car instead of returning to hers. What happened next confirmed every suspicion I had harbored over the past few months about her mysterious late nights. They began kissing passionately against the side of his vehicle, while his hands roamed all over her body in ways that left no doubt at what kind of relationship this was. I took more photos and even managed to record a short video clip before my emotions overwhelmed my ability to continue watching. The drive home felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life as I processed what I had just documented and tried to figure out my next steps. When I arrived at our house, I immediately uploaded all the photos and video clips to my computer and created backup copies on a flash drive. She walked through the front door about an hour later, acting as if nothing unusual had happened and asking me about mine. All I could manage to say was that my day had been outstanding, though the word felt like acid in my mouth given what I now knew about hers. We went through the motions of a normal evening, but I could not bring myself to engage in conversation or pretend that everything was fine between us. That night, I chose to sleep on the couch rather than share a bed with someone who had just spent the evening in another man's arms. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in over 2 years and spent the day researching divorce attorneys in our area. Sleep had been impossible after witnessing my wife's betrayal, and I knew that confronting her without legal preparation would be a mistake that could cost me dearly. North Carolina is a no-fault divorce state that requires couples to live separate and apart for 1 full year before filing for divorce, regardless of any marital misconduct. I scheduled a consultation with an attorney for that same afternoon, bringing my phone with the photos and video clips that documented her infidelity. The lawyer explained that although I could not file for an immediate divorce due to the mandatory 1-year separation requirement, the evidence I had gathered would be crucial for other aspects of the case. He confirmed that her proven adultery would bar her from receiving any alimony under North Carolina law, which could save me thousands of dollars in long-term financial obligations. The attorney also advised me to secure my financial assets immediately because spouses often attempt to drain joint accounts or max out credit cards once they realize separation is imminent. The first thing I did was stop making payments on my wife's car loan. For the past 3 years, I have been making the monthly car payments directly from our joint account, even though the loan was in her name alone. She had convinced me early in our marriage that combining our finances meant I should handle all the major bills, including her car payment. At the same time, she contributed to groceries and smaller household expenses. Ending those car payments immediately would send a clear message that our financial partnership was over and force her to take responsibility for her own obligations. That afternoon, I also contacted our credit card companies and removed her as an authorized user on every account that carried my name as the primary holder. I also called my life insurance company and changed the beneficiary from my wife to my business partner, ensuring that she would not profit from my death if something happened to me. The attorney had recommended that I gather all important financial documents before initiating any confrontation. So I spent several hours making copies of bank statements, tax returns, and business records. After securing my finances and preparing for the eventual legal proceedings, I packed a suitcase with enough clothes and toiletries to last several weeks. I found a small studio apartment available for short-term rental about 35 minutes from our house, far enough away to avoid accidental encounters, but close enough to handle business obligations. Before leaving that evening, I printed out the clearest photos from my surveillance operation and wrote a brief letter explaining that I knew about her affair. I placed the photos and letter on the kitchen counter, where she would find them when she returned from her latest fictional gym session. The letter was direct and unemotional. I had evidence of her infidelity. I was moving out to begin our separation, and any future communication should go through my attorney, whose contact information I included. My business partner offered me a room at his house when I explained the situation, but I needed time alone to process what had happened and plan my next moves. The isolation of the apartment gave me space to think clearly without the constant reminders of our failed marriage that surrounded me in our shared home. When my wife discovered the photos and letter that night, she sent a series of text messages that revealed more about her character than 9 years of marriage had. Instead of apologizing or expressing remorse for her betrayal, she tried to justify her actions by claiming that I had neglected her emotionally and physically. She accused me of making disparaging comments about her weight, refusing to be intimate with her, and failing to appreciate her as a woman. Every accusation in her messages was a lie, designed to shift blame away from her choices and onto my supposed failures as a husband. I did not respond to any of her texts because engaging with her lies and manipulation would only provide ammunition for her attorney during future proceedings. During our year-long separation, we maintained separate households while I documented everything for the eventual divorce filing. About 13 months after our separation began, I was finally able to file the official divorce papers, which were served to her at the clothing store where she worked. Somehow, she had managed to hire her own attorney, though I suspected that either her affair partner or her parents were funding her legal representation. The divorce proceedings started moving once her lawyer reviewed the photographic evidence and realized that fighting the adultery documentation would be futile. Again, the state's law prevented her from receiving alimony due to her proven infidelity, which saved me substantial money in long-term financial obligations. The only asset she was entitled to receive was her portion of the equity in our house, which amounted to less than $8,000 after we split the proceeds from the sale of the home whenever it sells. During the property division phase, I was allowed to retrieve my remaining belongings from the house while she was at work, ensuring that our final separation occurred without dramatic confrontations. After leaving the apartment, I accepted my business partner's offer to stay in his spare room until I could save enough money for a deposit on my own place. The temporary living arrangement strengthened our working relationship and allowed me to focus on rebuilding my life without the distractions of maintaining a household. When friends and family members asked about our divorce, I told them the truth about her infidelity without any additional malice. I chose not to post anything on social media about the situation because public humiliation was not my goal. Several people asked to see proof of her cheating, and I was prepared to provide the evidence if they insisted, but most accepted my explanation without requiring documentation. Looking back on those months of separation and legal proceedings, I realized that discovering her affair was a blessing that freed me from a relationship that was toxic in the end. 2 years have passed since I caught my wife with her affair partner at that small restaurant, and my life has improved in ways I never anticipated during those dark early days. The landscaping business has grown substantially during this period, partly because I channeled my emotional energy into work, and partly because I no longer had to factor her student loan payments into our monthly budget. Without the financial burden of supporting someone who was actively betraying our marriage, I was able to invest more money back into the company and purchase better equipment. My business partner and I recently hired 2 additional employees, and we are considering expanding our services to include landscape design rather than just maintenance. The extra income allowed me to move out of his spare room and into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a nicer part of town, giving me the independence I needed to fully heal from the divorce. Several people admitted that they had suspected something was wrong with my ex-wife's behavior during the final months of our marriage, but had not wanted to interfere in our personal business. Her own family members reached out to apologize for her actions, with her sister specifically mentioning that they were embarrassed by her choices and the way she had handled the situation. The affair partner she was seeing during our marriage apparently ended their relationship within 8 months of our divorce being finalized, leaving her to face the consequences of her decisions alone. According to mutual acquaintances, she has struggled financially since losing access to my income and has had to move back in with her parents while continuing to work at the same clothing store. Her student loan debt became her sole responsibility after the divorce. Without my contributions, she has fallen behind on several payments, according to someone who works in the same shopping center. I learned through the same social network that she has attempted to contact me indirectly through mutual friends, supposedly wanting to apologize and potentially reconcile our relationship. The emotional healing process took longer than I expected, but working with a counselor helped me understand that her betrayal was a reflection of her character rather than any deficiency on my part. During therapy sessions, I came to realize that many of the red flags I had dismissed or rationalized were actually clear indicators of her dishonest nature that I should have addressed much earlier. Her social butterfly personality, which I had found charming during our courtship, was actually a cover for someone who craved constant attention and validation from multiple sources. The elaborate stories she told about her gym friends and their conversations were practice sessions for the bigger lies she was telling about her affair. I started dating again about 18 months after our separation began, approaching new relationships with a healthier understanding of boundaries and honest communication. We have discussed the possibility of marriage in the future. Still, I am taking things slowly to ensure that we are building something genuine rather than rushing into another potentially problematic situation. The surveillance skills I learned during my investigation of my ex-wife proved useful in ways I never expected, particularly in helping my business partner catch an employee who was stealing equipment from our work sites. More importantly, The experience taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from someone who does not respect the commitment they made to you. I no longer regret the 9 years I spent married to someone who ultimately proved unworthy of my trust and devotion. Those years taught me valuable lessons about my own worth, the importance of financial independence, and the difference between genuine partnership and one-sided sacrifice. The money I save each month by not contributing to her student loans has allowed me to build an emergency fund and start planning for investments that will secure my financial future. I recently paid off the remaining debt on our landscaping equipment and have started saving for a down payment on a house that will be mine alone. The woman I thought I knew never actually existed, and mourning the end of an illusion is much easier than grieving the loss of something real. If there is one piece of advice I would give to anyone who suspects their spouse of cheating, it would be to trust your instincts and gather evidence before making any confrontations. The photos and video clips I collected were essential to protecting my financial interests and ensuring that I was not penalized for her misconduct during our divorce proceedings. My story proves that sometimes the most devastating betrayal can become the catalyst for building a better life than you ever thought possible.